The deer appeared in his headlights like a ghost stepping out of hell. Ellis Brewster jerked the wheel hard left, his Toyota Camry careening across the center line before slamming into the metal guardrail with a sound like thunder cracking open the night. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood as he sat there, ears ringing, tasting blood from where his lip had split against the steering wheel. He stumbled out onto the empty highway, checking himself for serious damage. A cut on his forehead, nothing more. The deer was long gone, probably laughing somewhere in the woods. Ellis walked around to assess the wreck when something caught his eye in the passenger seat. The glove compartment had popped open in the impact, spilling its contents across the floor. That's when he saw it. A second phone. Not his phone. A cheap Android burner that definitely hadn't been there this morning when he'd grabbed his insurance papers. Ellis picked it up with trembling fingers. The screen lit up with a text notification from someone named T sent just 20 minutes ago. "Your husband working late again? Good. Cassidy's at Jessica's tonight. Come over. I'm already hard thinking about you." The response from Mara, his wife's name, made his knees buckle. "On my way, baby. I love how you make me feel alive." Things I never did with Ellis. Never could. Ellis scrolled up through weeks of messages, photos, videos, timestamps showing they'd been meeting in his house, in his bed, while he worked 14-hour days auditing municipal accounts for the state of North Carolina. The messages revealed everything. Trent Dalen, his 18-year-old daughter Cassidy's boyfriend of 6 months, had been sleeping with his 42-year-old wife for nearly as long. One message from 3 weeks ago stopped him cold. Mara had written, "Cassidy suspects something, but she'll understand eventually. She's young. This is real love, not some teenage thing. You and I are forever." Trent's response, "What about Ellis?" Mara, "Ellis is background noise. Always has been. A placeholder. Until I found you." Ellis stood on that dark highway for 10 minutes, reading every message, studying every photo, memorizing every detail. Then he carefully placed the phone back exactly where he'd found it and called AAA for a tow. By the time he got home at midnight, Mara was in bed, pretending to sleep. She stirred when he entered their bedroom, making a show of checking the time. "You're so late," she murmured. "Everything okay?" Deer jumped out. "Wrecked the car," Ellis said, keeping his voice steady. "I'll deal with insurance tomorrow." She sat up, instantly concerned, or pretending to be. "Oh my God, are you hurt? That cut on your head?" "It's nothing. Just tired." Mara examined his forehead with what seemed like genuine worry. She even got up to bring him ice and antiseptic. As she dabbed at the cut, Ellis studied her face in the bathroom mirror. Still beautiful at 42. Still the woman he'd married 19 years ago. Still the mother of his daughter. Still a stranger who'd been destroying his life for months. "I'm so sorry this happened," she whispered, kissing his cheek. "I love you." "I love you too," Ellis replied, meaning it and hating himself for it. The next morning, Ellis drove Mara's Honda to work while she handled the insurance adjuster. His hands shook as he parked outside the government building, where he'd worked as a senior auditor for 8 years. He'd always been good with numbers, good at finding discrepancies, good at following paper trails that others missed. Now he needed those skills for something more personal. Ellis spent his lunch break researching Trent Dalen. The kid was 19, not 18. Cassidy had been lying about that. He was a sophomore at Appalachian State studying business, maintained a 3.2 GPA, and had received a partial academic scholarship. More importantly, Trent had been arrested for attack 2 years ago. Charges dropped after his sufferer, another teenager, decided not to testify. That afternoon, Ellis called his old mentor's daughter, Olivia Winthrop, who'd become one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the region. He'd helped her father with some financial irregularities years ago, before the old man died of cancer. "Ellis Brewster," Olivia said when she picked up. "Been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need advice. Hypothetically speaking, I charge $300 an hour for hypotheticals." "That's fine." Ellis could hear her interest sharpen through the phone. "Okay, come by my office at 6. And Ellis, if this is about what I think it's about, you're going to want to be very careful how you proceed." Olivia's law office occupied the top floor of a renovated textile mill downtown. She was 43, silver-haired, sharp-featured, and had a reputation for annihilating opposing counsel in family court. Her father had always said she had ice water in her veins. "So," she said, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon, "your wife is having an affair. How did you—" "You don't call me about hypothetical legal situations unless your world is ending. Plus, you look like someone ran over your dog." "Who's she sleeping with?" Ellis told her everything. Olivia listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair. The boyfriend's age creates some interesting complications, she said. If he was a minor when this started, we're talking about charges of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor for your wife. He was 18 when they met, but you said he's 19 now, and they've been together 6 months. When exactly did he turn 19? Ellis felt something cold settle in his stomach. I don't know. Find out. And Ellis, don't do anything stupid. Don't confront them. Don't move money around. Don't change your behavior at all. If you want to destroy them legally, you need to be smarter than they are. That evening, Ellis sat at his kitchen table with Mara and Cassidy, eating pot roast like they had every Thursday for the past 5 years. His daughter was talking about college applications, her face bright with excitement about her future. She'd inherited her mother's looks, but hopefully not her character. Dad, you're being weird tonight, Cassidy said. You've barely said anything. Just tired from the accident, Ellis replied. How's Trent doing? Haven't seen him around lately. Cassidy and Mara exchanged a quick glance. So fast, Ellis almost missed it. He's been busy with school stuff, Cassidy said. You know how it is. Actually, I don't. I never went to college. Ellis, Mara said with that particular tone that meant he was being difficult. You're being negative. Just asking about my daughter's boyfriend. That's what fathers do. Another glance between them. Ellis filed it away with everything else. That night, after Mara fell asleep, Ellis slipped out to the garage and accessed Cassidy's laptop using the parental controls he'd installed years ago. It took him 20 minutes to find what he was looking for. Trent's birthday was March 15th. Today was October 8th. He'd turned 19 in March, which meant he'd been 18 when he started dating Cassidy in April. But the photos on Mara's phone were time-stamped from late March, before Trent's 19th birthday. Ellis sat in his garage until 3 in the morning, staring at that birth date and thinking about age of consent laws in North Carolina. Then he went back to bed and lay awake until dawn, listening to his wife breathe beside him. The next day, Ellis began his audit. He started with their joint finances, printing out every bank statement, credit card bill, and investment account summary from the past year. Mara had been careless with money lately. Expensive dinners she claimed were work events, hotel charges for conferences that didn't exist, charges at Victoria's Secret and expensive lingerie stores. Then he examined their insurance policies, retirement accounts, and the deed to their house. Everything was joint property accumulated during their marriage. In North Carolina, that meant everything would be split 50-50 in a divorce unless he could prove infidelity, which would entitle him to a larger share and possibly alimony from her. Ellis had always been meticulous with records. Now that meticulousness became weaponized. He opened a new bank account at a different institution, slowly transferring small amounts from their joint savings. Nothing large enough to trigger alerts, just a few hundred here and there. Within 3 weeks, he'd moved nearly $12,000. Money Mara never tracked because she assumed Ellis handled all their finances. Meanwhile, he researched Trent's background more thoroughly. The kid came from money. His father owned 3 car dealerships across western North Carolina. Trent drove a BMW that Daddy bought him, lived in an expensive apartment near campus, and had a credit card with no apparent limit. But money made people careless, and careless people left trails. Ellis used his auditing skills to trace Trent's financial activity. The kid had been using his credit card to pay for hotels, restaurants, and gifts for Mara. Flowers, jewelry, expensive wine, all charged to Daddy's credit card and all creating a clear timeline of the affair. More importantly, Trent had been posting on social media about his relationship with an older woman who was teaching him things. The posts were vague, but the timestamps corresponded perfectly with the phone messages. Ellis screenshot everything. 3 weeks after the accident, Ellis finally made his move. He called Appalachian State's Dean of Students' office and requested an anonymous meeting about a student conduct issue. I have reason to believe that one of your students, Trent Dalen, has been involved in an inappropriate relationship with a minor, Ellis told the dean, a nervous woman named Patricia Cole. I have documentation that this relationship began before his 19th birthday, which creates legal complications. What kind of documentation? Ellis had prepared for this question. Photos, text messages, financial records showing he purchased booze for minors, social media posts bragging about the relationship. I also have reason to believe he's been using his father's credit card to fund illegal activities. Dean Cole frowned. These are serious allegations. Do you have proof? I can provide you with copies of everything, but I want to remain anonymous. This involves my family. I understand. If you can email the documentation to our conduct review board, we'll investigate immediately. Ellis sent the emails that afternoon. He'd edited the screenshots carefully, removing any identifying information about Mara while keeping everything that implicated Trent. The financial records showed clearly that Trent had been purchasing booze, hotel rooms, and expensive gifts for someone, behavior that violated the university's code of conduct, even if it wasn't technically illegal. 4 days later, Trent was suspended pending investigation. Cassidy came home crying that evening. "Dad, did you do something to Trent?" Ellis looked up from his newspaper. "What do you mean?" "He got suspended from school. They said someone reported him for drinking and inappropriate relationships. He thinks it was you." "Why would I do that?" "Because you've always hated him." Ellis had never expressed any opinion about Trent one way or another. If anything, he'd been remarkably tolerant of his daughter's boyfriend, even when the kid ate their food and monopolized their TV during his visits. "I've never said a negative word about Trent," Ellis said calmly. "You don't have to say anything. We can tell you don't like him." Cassidy froze. Another slip. Another piece of evidence that she and Mara had been discussing him behind his back. "I mean, I can tell," she said quickly. "Cassidy, I want you to think very carefully about what you're saying. Are you accusing me of sabotaging your boyfriend's education?" "I don't know. Maybe." Mara appeared in the doorway. "What's all the shouting about?" "Dad got Trent suspended." Mara's face went very still. "Ellis, is that true?" "Of course not. I barely know the kid." "Then how do you explain?" "I don't explain anything," Ellis said, standing up. "I didn't even know he was suspended until Cassidy told me. If he's in trouble at school, maybe he should examine his own behavior instead of blaming other people." "His own behavior?" Cassidy's voice rose to a shout. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means maybe 19-year-old boys who drink booze and brag about their sex lives on social media shouldn't be surprised when colleges take notice." Both women stared at him. Ellis had never spoken so bluntly about Trent before. He'd never indicated that he knew anything about the kid's private life. "How do you know about his social media?" Mara asked quietly. "I don't. I'm speculating about why a college student might get suspended, unless you know something I don't." Another long silence. Ellis could practically see the wheels turning in both their heads, trying to figure out how much he knew and how much he was guessing. "I'm going to Trent's apartment," Cassidy announced. "He needs support right now." "No, you're not," Ellis said. "You're 18 years old and you live in my house. You'll follow my rules. You can't stop me." "Actually, I can. You're still financially dependent on me. Your car, your insurance, your college fund, all mine. If you want to throw your future away for some boy who can't stay out of trouble, that's your choice. But you won't do it with my money." Cassidy looked to her mother for support. Mara hesitated, which was interesting. If she weren't having an affair with Trent, she'd immediately take their daughter's side. Instead, she seemed torn between protecting her lover and maintaining her cover. "Maybe you should stay home tonight," Mara said finally. "Let Trent handle his school problems." Cassidy stared at her mother in shock. "Are you serious?" "I am serious about you not making impulsive decisions that could affect your future." Ellis almost smiled. Mara was scared. She was finally realizing that her affair might have consequences beyond her marriage. Cassidy stormed upstairs and slammed her door. Mara lingered in the kitchen, clearly wanting to say something but not knowing how to begin. "This is going to be hard on her," she said finally. "She'll survive. Kids are resilient." "Ellis," Mara moved closer to him. "Are you okay? You've been different since the accident." "Different how?" "Distant. Cold. Like you're angry about something." Ellis looked at his wife. Really looked at her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had been lying to his face for months while destroying their family. Part of him wanted to confront her right there, to scream and throw things and demand answers, but that wasn't the smart play. "I'm fine," he said. "Just tired. Maybe we should go away for a weekend, just the two of us. Reconnect." The suggestion was obscene. She wanted to go away with him while continuing to sleep with their daughter's boyfriend. Ellis wondered if she planned to see Trent before they left, or if she'd text him from their hotel room. "That sounds nice," Ellis said. "Let me check my schedule." Mara smiled and kissed his cheek. "I love you. I love you too." The lies came so easily now. That weekend, while Mara was at the grocery store, Ellis installed hidden cameras in their bedroom, living room, and kitchen. tiny wireless devices that uploaded footage to a cloud server he'd created under a fake name. If Mara brought Trent to their house again, Ellis would have video evidence of infidelity in their marital home. He also hired a private investigator named Janet Kellerman, a former cop who specialized in matrimonial cases. Janet was expensive but thorough, and she had contacts throughout the legal system. "I need documentation of an affair," Ellis told her during their meeting at a coffee shop in Asheville. "Photos, videos, witnesses, financial records, everything you can find." "How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 months, probably longer." "Any chance of reconciliation?" Ellis considered the question. Could he forgive Mara? Could they rebuild their marriage after this betrayal? He thought about the messages on her phone, the way she'd looked at him with pity when she called him background noise, the casual cruelty of her affair with their daughter's boyfriend. "No," he said, "no chance. Then we do this right. Complete documentation, ironclad evidence, and enough ammunition to ensure you get everything you're entitled to in the divorce." "What about criminal charges?" "The boyfriend was 18 when this started. Probably not worth pursuing unless you want to make this a public spectacle. Allegations involving unlawful sexual conduct with a minor are hard to prove when the age difference is small, and it might hurt your case in family court. Better to focus on the civil side: infidelity, emotional distress, maybe alienation of affection." Ellis didn't care about money. He cared about justice. But justice, he was learning, often came in different forms than he'd expected. Janet's first report arrived a week later. She'd followed Mara and Trent to a hotel in Hendersonville, photographed them entering and leaving together, and documented their 3-hour stay with time-stamped images. She'd also confirmed that Trent was using his father's credit card to pay for everything, which created potential fraud issues if Daddy didn't know what the charges were for. More importantly, Janet had discovered that Mara had been lying to Ellis about her work schedule. On days when she claimed to be attending conferences or working late, she'd actually taken vacation time to spend with Trent. Her employer had no record of the professional events she'd supposedly attended. "Your wife is not a careful cheater," Janet reported. "She's been sloppy about covering her tracks, probably because she doesn't think you're paying attention." Ellis had spent 19 years not paying attention. That was about to change. He began varying his own schedule, coming home at unexpected times, showing up at Mara's workplace for surprise lunch dates. Each time, he'd catch her off guard, flustered and nervous, clearly disrupted from whatever she'd been planning. "You're being so sweet lately," she said after he'd surprised her with lunch 3 times in 1 week. "What's gotten into you?" "I almost died in that accident," Ellis said. "Made me realize how much I love you, how much I want to spend time with you." "That's so romantic." The irony was devastating. Ellis was probably being a better husband now than he'd been in years. More attentive, more romantic, more present. And it was all in service of destroying her. 2 weeks later, Trent was expelled from Appalachian State. The investigation had turned up evidence of academic misconduct in addition to the conduct violations. Apparently, he'd been buying term papers online and submitting them as his own work. Janet had discovered this through her contacts at the university and had anonymously provided the evidence to the academic review board. Cassidy was inconsolable. She blamed Ellis, blamed the school, blamed everyone except Trent himself. She'd started spending most of her time at Jessica's house, coming home only to sleep and change clothes. "This is destroying our daughter," Mara said one night after Cassidy had left again. "Maybe you could talk to her." "About what?" "About being more understanding, about giving Trent another chance." Ellis stared at his wife. She was asking him to comfort their daughter about her lover's academic failure. The audacity was breathtaking. "Trent made his choices," Ellis said. "Cassidy needs to learn that actions have consequences. You're being cruel. I'm being realistic. Do you want our daughter to tie her future to someone who cheats at school and gets kicked out for misconduct? People make mistakes. Some mistakes are bigger than others." Mara fell silent. Ellis wondered if she was thinking about her own mistakes. That night, his hidden cameras captured something interesting. Around midnight, while Ellis pretended to sleep, Mara snuck downstairs and made a phone call. "I think he knows," she whispered into her phone. "He's been acting strange, asking questions, showing up at work. And the whole thing with your school, that can't be a coincidence." Ellis couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Mara's responses told him everything he needed to know. "No, we can't meet at the house anymore. It's too risky. I don't know how much he knows, but we need to be careful. Maybe we should cool things off for a while. A long pause. I love you too, but we have to be smart about this. If Ellis finds out, he could ruin both of us. Too late for that, Ellis thought. He was already ruining them. They just didn't know it yet. The next morning, Ellis called Olivia Winthrop. I need to file for divorce, he said. How quickly can we move? Depends on how much evidence you have. More than enough. Good. Come in tomorrow and we'll start the paperwork. Ellis, once we file, there's no going back. Are you sure about this? Ellis thought about Mara's phone call, about her casual dismissal of him as background noise, about the months of lies and betrayal. He thought about Cassidy, who'd been turned against him in service of her mother's affair. He thought about Trent, who'd used his family's home as a playground for seducing married women. I'm sure. Then let's destroy them legally. Ellis spent the weekend organizing his evidence, bank statements showing Mara's suspicious expenses, hotel receipts Janet had obtained, screenshots of Trent's social media posts, photos of them together, financial records proving Mara had lied about her work schedule, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between them. But he wasn't finished. Olivia had taught him to think strategically, to consider not just the immediate battle, but the entire war. Divorce would hurt Mara financially, but it wouldn't destroy her completely. For that, he needed to be more creative. Ellis began researching Mara's employer, Riverside Private Academy. As HR director, she was responsible for maintaining professional standards and ensuring appropriate relationships between staff and students. The school had a strict moral conduct clause in their employment contracts. Violation could result in immediate termination without severance. More interestingly, Mara had access to confidential student records, financial information, and disciplinary files. If she'd used that access inappropriately, it would violate state privacy laws and potentially create criminal liability. Ellis started digging deeper into the school's records. As a government auditor, he had legitimate reasons to examine their financial statements and tax filings. What he found was troubling, but not surprising. Several accounting irregularities that suggested either incompetence or fraud in the business office. Nothing directly linked to Mara, but close enough to raise questions about her oversight responsibilities. Ellis made copies of everything and scheduled a meeting with the school's board of directors. I've identified some potential compliance issues with your financial reporting, he told the board chairman, Robert Haskell, a wealthy retiree who took his fiduciary duties seriously. As a government auditor, I felt obligated to bring these to your attention. What kind of issues? Ellis presented his findings professionally, focusing on the technical violations rather than any personal agenda. The board agreed to hire an independent accounting firm to conduct a full audit of the school's finances. That audit would inevitably examine HR practices, employee conduct, and administrative oversight. When it did, investigators would discover that the HR director had been taking unauthorized vacation time, making personal phone calls during work hours, and potentially using school resources for personal business. They might also discover that she'd been having an affair with a former student, because Trent had briefly attended Riverside Private Academy before transferring to public school in his sophomore year. Ellis had checked those records carefully. Trent Dalen had been enrolled at Riverside for 3 months when he was 16 years old. Mara had been working there at the time. If their relationship predated Cassidy's introduction, and Ellis suspected it did, then Mara had potentially violated the school's code of conduct with a minor student. The pieces were falling into place beautifully. 3 days later, Ellis filed for divorce. Olivia had prepared the paperwork meticulously, citing infidelity and seeking alimony, attorney fees, and the majority of their marital assets. The filing also requested temporary exclusive use of the family home and temporary custody of Cassidy. Mara was served at work by a sheriff's deputy. According to Janet's contacts, she'd broken down crying in front of her colleagues and had to leave early. Ellis was in a meeting when she called. "How could you do this?" she screamed into the phone. "How could you humiliate me like this?" "I'm in a meeting, Mara. We'll talk tonight. We'll talk now. You can't just throw away 19 years of marriage." "I didn't throw it away." "You did." Silence. "Then, what's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about Trent." The silence stretched longer this time. Ellis could hear her breathing, could practically feel her panic through the phone. "I don't know what you think you know. I know everything. The hotels, the lies about work conferences, the phone calls, the messages. Everything. Ellis, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You made your choice. Now you live with the consequences." Ellis hung up and returned to his meeting. His hands were steady, his voice calm. He felt nothing but cold satisfaction. That evening, Mara was waiting for him when he got home. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared and her eyes were red and swollen. For the first time in months, she looked older than her 42 years. "We need to talk," she said. "No, we don't. Ellis, please. I know I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Ellis laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You've been screwing our daughter's boyfriend for 6 months. You've been lying to my face every single day. You called me background noise. That's not a mistake, Mara. That's a choice." She flinched as if he'd hit her. "You don't understand. My marriage to you had been dead for years. We were like roommates, not lovers. I felt invisible, unwanted." "So you decided to feel wanted by a 19-year-old boy?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Explain to me how you justified destroying our family for teenage Pecker." Mara recoiled from his language. Ellis had never spoken to her that way before, had rarely used profanity at all, but he was done being the polite, understanding husband. "I love him," she said quietly. "You love him? You love a kid who's barely older than our daughter? A kid who got expelled from college for cheating and misconduct? That wasn't his fault. Nothing is ever his fault, is it? Just like nothing is ever your fault. It's my fault for not being exciting enough, or the school's fault for investigating his behavior, or society's fault for not understanding your true love. You're being cruel. I'm being honest, maybe for the first time in our marriage." Mara straightened, some of her composure returning. "Fine. If this is how you want to handle it, we'll handle it through lawyers. But don't think you can steal everything from me. I have rights too. You have the right to whatever a cheating wife is entitled to under North Carolina law, which isn't much. I'll fight you. Good. Fight me. But understand that every day this drags out, more people will learn about your affair with a teenager. Your colleagues, your friends, your family. Everyone will know that Mara Brewster threw away her marriage to play teacher with a college boy." She left that night and didn't come back. Cassidy returned home 2 days later, furious and defiant. "I can't believe you're doing this to Mom," she said. "She's devastated." "She's devastated because she got caught." "Caught doing what?" Ellis studied his daughter's face. Cassidy genuinely didn't know about the affair, or she was an exceptional actress. Either way, he decided to tell her the truth. "Your mother has been having an affair with Trent." Cassidy stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. "That's ridiculous. That's insane. You're making things up to justify—" "I have photos, Cassidy. I have text messages, phone records, hotel receipts. Your mother and your boyfriend have been sleeping together for months." "You're lying." Ellis pulled out his phone and showed her one of Janet's photographs. Mara and Trent entering a hotel together. His hand on her lower back, both of them laughing. Cassidy looked at the photo for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was very small. "When was this taken?" 2 weeks ago. But Trent was with me 2 weeks ago. We went to the movies." "What day?" "Saturday." Ellis checked the timestamp on the photo. This was taken on Thursday. Cassidy sat down heavily on the couch. "I don't understand. Your boyfriend has been cheating on you with your mother. Your mother has been cheating on me with your boyfriend. They've been using our house, spending my money, and lying to both of us." "No." Cassidy's voice was barely a whisper. "No, that can't be true." Ellis showed her more photos, more evidence. With each image, he watched his daughter's world collapse. Part of him felt guilty for causing her this pain, but she needed to know the truth. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "Since the night of my accident. I found a phone in the car. Mara had been texting Trent." "And you didn't tell me?" "I wanted to be sure, and I wanted to protect you." Cassidy was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "This is why Trent got expelled, isn't it?" "You reported him." "He got expelled because he was cheating academically and violating the school's conduct code. I just made sure the right people knew about it. You destroyed his life. He destroyed his own life. And ours." Cassidy stood up abruptly. "I need to talk to him. I need to hear this from him." "Cassidy, no. I need to know if this is true. I need to hear him say it." She left before Ellis could stop her. He let her go. She needed to hear the truth from Trent himself. It was the only way she'd really believe it. 2 hours later, Cassidy returned. Her face was blank, emotionless, like she'd cried herself empty. "He didn't deny it," she said. "When I showed him the photos, he didn't deny it." Ellis wanted to comfort her, but he wasn't sure she'd accept comfort from him. He'd been the messenger of this devastating news. "I'm sorry," he said. "Are you? Or are you glad that I finally see them for what they really are?" The question was perceptive. Ellis was glad that Cassidy knew the truth, but he wasn't glad about her pain. "I'm sorry you're hurting. I'm not sorry, you know." Cassidy nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "Now we move forward. You go to college, start your life, find someone who deserves you. I rebuild my life without your mother." "What about Mom? What about her? What's going to happen to her?" Ellis considered the question. The divorce would cost Mara financially, but wouldn't destroy her professionally, unless the school audit uncovered something damaging. The affair itself might create some social embarrassment, but she could weather that, unless, of course, other complications arose. "That depends on the choices she makes going forward," Ellis said. "You're going to ruin her, aren't you? I'm going to hold her accountable." Cassidy stared at him with something that might have been fear. "I've never seen you like this before. You're different." Ellis had been thinking the same thing. The mild, accommodating husband was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating, someone who planned methodically and executed without mercy. "People change when they have to," he said. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, document reviews, and strategic planning. Olivia was impressed by the thoroughness of Ellis's evidence and the methodical way he documented everything. "You've built an ironclad case," she said during one of their meetings. "Mara's attorney is going to have very limited options. What kind of settlement are we looking at?" "In North Carolina, infidelity affects alimony and property division. Since you can prove she committed infidelity, she's not entitled to alimony from you. You might even be able to claim alimony from her, depending on the income differential. As for property, the marital assets will be divided, but the court can consider the infidelity when determining what's equitable." Meaning you'll probably get the house, the majority of the retirement accounts, and a favorable settlement. Overall, Mara will get enough to start over, but not enough to maintain her current lifestyle. That wasn't enough for Ellis. He wanted consequences that matched the magnitude of her betrayal. What about criminal charges? For infidelity, North Carolina technically still has an infidelity statute, but it's rarely prosecuted. You'd be better off focusing on the civil side. What about other charges? Identity theft, fraud, anything else? Olivia gave him a sharp look. "Ellis, what exactly are you thinking?" Ellis had been thinking about a lot of things. About Mara's access to confidential school records. About Trent's fraudulent use of his father's credit card. About the possibility that their affair had begun while Trent was still a minor student at Riverside Academy. "I'm thinking about justice," he said. "Justice and revenge aren't the same thing, aren't they?" Olivia leaned back in her chair. "Be very careful, Ellis. The line between justice and revenge is thinner than you think. And once you cross it, there's no going back." Ellis nodded, but he'd already made his decision. Mara had crossed lines first. She'd betrayed their marriage, corrupted their daughter's relationship, and destroyed their family. If there were consequences beyond divorce court, she'd earned them. 3 days later, the independent audit of Riverside Private Academy released its preliminary findings. The school's financial records contained numerous irregularities, including unauthorized expense reimbursements, missing documentation for several large purchases, and questionable overtime payments to certain staff members. More damaging was the discovery that HR Director Mara Brewster had been claiming work hours while actually taking personal time, had used school phones for excessive personal calls, and had accessed student records without documented business. Justification. The audit also revealed that Mara had been in contact with former student Trent Dalen on multiple occasions over the past year, contact that violated school policies regarding relationships with alumni under age 21. Robert Haskell called Ellis personally to discuss the findings. "This is deeply troubling," Haskell said. "We trusted Mara with confidential information and significant responsibilities. If she's been abusing that trust, what are your options?" "Immediate termination for cause. No severance, no benefits continuation, and possible legal action to recover any financial damages." Ellis felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. Mara's career at Riverside was finished, but he wasn't done yet. That afternoon, Ellis called Trent's father, David Dalen. He'd researched the man thoroughly. Successful businessman, pillar of the community, deacon at his church. The kind of man who would be horrified to learn how his son had been spending his money. Mr. Dalen, this is Ellis Brewster. I believe you know my daughter Cassidy. Of course. How are you, Ellis? I'm well, thank you. I was calling about your son, Trent. I'm afraid there's been a situation involving my family that you should know about. Ellis explained everything in calm, measured tones. The affair with his wife, the hotel charges on Trent's credit card, the academic misconduct that led to his expulsion, the impact on Cassidy and their family. David Dalen was silent for a long time after Ellis finished. Are you certain about this? He asked finally. I have documentation of everything. Photos, financial records, text messages. If you'd like to see the evidence. No, I believe you. And I'm horrified. Ellis, I had no idea Trent was capable of this level of betrayal. I wanted you to hear it from me rather than through gossip. I appreciate that, and I want you to know that Trent's access to my credit accounts will be terminated immediately. If there are any charges related to this affair, I'll make sure you're compensated. That's generous, but not necessary. It's absolutely necessary. My son has brought shame on our family and hurt yours. There have to be consequences. Ellis agreed completely. David Dalen was as good as his word. Within 24 hours, Trent's credit cards were canceled, his car was repossessed, and his apartment lease was terminated. The young man who'd been living like a prince suddenly found himself with no money, no transportation, and no place to live. More importantly, David Dalen had connections throughout the region's business community. A quiet word from him would ensure that Trent never found decent employment in Western North Carolina. Ellis felt no sympathy for the boy. Trent had made his choices. The following week brought more good news. The board of directors at Riverside Private Academy voted unanimously to terminate Mara's employment for cause. The termination letter cited misuse of school resources, inappropriate contact with former students, falsification of work records, and conduct unbecoming a school administrator. Mara would receive no severance pay, no benefits continuation, and no positive references for future employment. Her career in education was effectively over. But Ellis still wasn't satisfied. He'd been thinking about the timeline of Mara's affair with Trent. The boy had attended Riverside briefly when he was 16. Mara had been working there. If their relationship had begun then, rather than after he'd started dating Cassidy, it would constitute a much more serious crime. Ellis decided to investigate further. He used his government access to pull Trent's academic records from Riverside Academy. The boy had been enrolled from September through November of his sophomore year, 3 years ago. He'd been 16 years old at the time. Ellis also obtained Mara's employment records for that period. She'd been working as an HR assistant then, before her promotion to director. Her responsibilities had included student file management and disciplinary record keeping. More importantly, Mara's phone records from that time period showed numerous calls to a number registered to Trent Dalen. The calls had begun in October while Trent was still enrolled and had continued sporadically for the next 2 years. If Mara had been involved in a relationship with a 16-year-old student, it could be considered a violation of age of consent laws in North Carolina. That was a felony punishable by up to 7 years in prison. Ellis brought his findings to Olivia. This changes everything, she said after reviewing the evidence. If you can prove they had a sexual relationship while he was a minor student, Mara is looking at serious criminal charges. How do we prove it? We need more than phone records. We need testimony, physical evidence, or documentation of their relationship. Ellis thought about the messages he'd seen on Mara's burner phone. She'd mentioned feeling alive with Trent, in ways she never had with Ellis. She'd talked about teaching him things and about their connection being real love, not some teenage thing. Those messages implied an inappropriate relationship, but they weren't explicit enough to support a charge of unlawful conduct with a minor. What if we could get them to admit it? How? Ellis had been thinking about that. Mara and Trent were both desperate now. She'd lost her job. He'd lost his support system. Desperate people made mistakes. What if we offered them a way out? Something that looked like a compromise but was actually a trap? Olivia studied his face. Ellis, what are you planning? I'm planning to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Ellis's plan was elegant in its simplicity. He would offer Mara a settlement that seemed generous, enough money to start over somewhere else in exchange for a quick, quiet divorce with minimal publicity. All she had to do was sign an affidavit acknowledging the affair and providing a timeline of when it began. If she lied about the timeline to avoid criminal liability, she'd be committing perjury. If she told the truth, she'd be admitting to involvement in an unlawful relationship with a minor. Either way, Ellis would have her. He presented the offer through Olivia, who met with Mara's attorney at a neutral location. "This is surprisingly generous," Mara's lawyer said after reviewing the settlement terms. "Your client is offering more than we expected." "Mr. Brewster wants to move forward with his life," Olivia replied. "He's willing to be reasonable if Mrs. Brewster is honest about the circumstances of their marriage's breakdown." The affidavit was carefully worded. It required Mara to acknowledge the affair with Trent Dalen and to provide specific dates and locations where sexual contact had occurred. It also required her to state under oath when the relationship had begun. "This seems like a fair resolution," Mara's attorney said. "I'll recommend that my client accept the offer." Ellis waited 3 days for Mara's response. When it came, it was everything he'd hoped for. Mara signed the affidavit and dated the beginning of her affair with Trent to April of the current year, when Cassidy had first introduced them. She provided detailed information about their meetings, their sexual encounters, and their plans for the future. She also lied under oath about when the relationship began. Ellis immediately took the signed affidavit to the district attorney's office, along with the phone records proving that Mara and Trent had been in contact 3 years earlier. "This is perjury," the assistant district attorney said after reviewing the documents. "She deliberately misrepresented the timeline to avoid charges related to an unlawful relationship with a minor. What are the penalties? Perjury is a felony. She's looking at up to 5 years in prison." Ellis felt a deep satisfaction. Mara had destroyed their family for Trent Dalen. Now she would face criminal charges because of him. But he still had one more move to make. Ellis arranged to meet Cassidy for dinner at their old favorite restaurant. She'd been staying with friends since learning about the affair, avoiding both her parents while she processed the betrayal. "How are you holding up?" Ellis asked. "I'm angry," Cassidy said. "At Mom, at Trent, at you, at everyone. I don't know who to trust anymore. You can trust me." "Can I? You've been planning this for months. You destroyed Trent's life, Mom's career, everything. How do I know you won't destroy me too if I disappoint you?" The question stung because it contained a grain of truth. Ellis had become someone harder, more calculating, more willing to hurt people who crossed him. "You're my daughter," he said. "Nothing you could do would make me want to hurt you. Even if I still love Mom? Even if I think what you're doing to her is cruel?" Ellis considered the question carefully. "I'm not doing anything to your mother that she didn't earn. She made choices, and choices have consequences. She's still my mother. Yes, she is, and nothing I do will change that. But Cassidy, you need to understand something. The woman you thought was your mother doesn't exist. The real Mara is someone who would betray her family for a teenager, who would lie to your face for months, who would destroy everything we built together for momentary pleasure." Cassidy was quiet for a long time. "What happens now?" "Now you go to college, start your adult life, and decide what kind of person you want to be. And I hope you choose to be better than both your parents. What about you? What kind of person are you going to be?" Ellis looked at his daughter, smart, strong, and wounded by circumstances beyond her control. He wanted to tell her that he'd go back to being the mild, accommodating man he'd been before. But that man was gone, destroyed along with his marriage and his trust. "I'm going to be someone who doesn't get taken advantage of," he said finally. 2 weeks later, Mara was arrested for perjury. The charges made the local news, along with details about her affair with a former student and her termination from Riverside Academy. Ellis watched the coverage with grim satisfaction. Trent, meanwhile, had fled North Carolina entirely. His father had given him a choice: face potential criminal charges for his role in the perjury, or leave the state and never return. The boy had chosen exile. Ellis's divorce was finalized the following month. He received the house, the majority of their assets, and a judgment for emotional distress damages. Mara received enough money to hire a criminal defense attorney and start over somewhere else, if she avoided prison. On the day the divorce became final, Ellis cleaned out his home office and burned everything related to his marriage. Photos, documents, mementos, all of it went into a fire pit in his backyard. He watched 19 years of his life turn to ash and felt nothing but relief. Cassidy came to see him one last time before leaving for college. "I want you to know that I don't approve of what you did," she said, "but I understand why you did it. That's all I can ask for. Will you be okay, living here alone?" Ellis looked around the house he'd shared with Mara. Every room held memories of their life together, but those memories no longer hurt. They felt like artifacts from someone else's life. "I'll be fine," he said. "Better than fine." "Dad, I love you, but I'm also a little afraid of you now." Ellis nodded. "That's probably smart." After Cassidy left for college, Ellis sat in his empty house and took inventory of what he'd accomplished. Mara faced felony charges and financial ruin. Trent was in exile, cut off from his family's money and support. The affair that had destroyed his marriage had ultimately destroyed everyone involved. Justice, Ellis reflected, was a dish best served systematically. 6 months later, Ellis received word that Mara had pleaded guilty to perjury charges in exchange for a suspended sentence and 2 years of probation. She'd avoided prison, but would be a convicted felon for the rest of her life. Her career in education was permanently over, and her reputation in their community was destroyed beyond repair. Trent, according to Ellis's sources, was working at a fast food restaurant in Florida and living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates. His dreams of business success had died along with his father's financial support. Ellis felt no sympathy for either of them. They'd made their choices. He was working late one evening when his doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw Olivia Winthrop standing on his porch. She looked tired and older than her 43 years. "We need to talk," she said when he opened the door. Ellis poured them both bourbon and waited for her to speak. "I've been thinking about what we did," Olivia said finally. "About the methods we used, the lines we crossed." "We didn't cross any lines. We used the legal system exactly as it was designed to be used." "Did we? Or did we manipulate it to achieve a specific outcome?" Ellis studied her face. "You're having second thoughts. I'm having nightmares. About the look on Mara's face when she was arrested, about what we turned you into. You didn't turn me into anything. You helped me become who I needed to be." "And who is that?" Ellis considered the question. Who was he now? Not the mild auditor who'd been betrayed by his wife and dismissed as background noise. Not the accommodating husband who'd prioritized peace over truth. He was someone harder, more calculating, more willing to pursue his objectives regardless of the cost to others. "I'm someone who doesn't lose," he said finally. Olivia finished her bourbon and stood to leave. "I hope it was worth it." After she left, Ellis sat alone in his quiet house. Was it worth it? He thought about the months of planning, the systematic destruction of his enemies, the cold satisfaction of watching them face consequences for their betrayal. Yes, it was worth it. Ellis walked to his home office and opened the file cabinet where he kept his most important documents. Inside was a thick folder labeled The Quiet Ledger, his complete record of the investigation, the evidence, and the outcomes. Every debt had been paid in full. He thought about Mara, probably lying awake in whatever cheap apartment she could afford, wondering how her life had unraveled so completely. He thought about Trent, flipping burgers in Florida and remembering when he'd thought he was untouchable. He thought about Cassidy, hopefully learning to choose better people to trust. Ellis had lost a wife and gained an enemy. He'd lost a daughter's unqualified love and gained her wary respect. He'd lost his faith in human decency and gained something more valuable, the knowledge that he was capable of protecting himself. The transformation was complete. The mild auditor was gone, replaced by someone who understood that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. Someone who knew that in a world full of hunters, the only safety came from being the most dangerous hunter in the room. Ellis locked the file cabinet and turned off the lights. Tomorrow he would go back to work, auditing municipal accounts and finding discrepancies in other people's financial records. But he would never again be the man who trusted blindly, who assumed the best about people, who let others define his worth. He had become something else, something quieter but infinitely more dangerous. Ellis Brewster was done being anyone's sufferer. 6 months later, Ellis received an unexpected visitor. He was working in his garden when a car pulled into his driveway. A young woman got out, someone he didn't recognize at first. It was Jessica, Cassidy's friend. She looked nervous as she approached. "Mr. Brewster, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I wanted to talk to you about something." Ellis set down his gardening tools and studied her face. Jessica had always been a good kid. Smart, honest, loyal to Cassidy even during the worst of the family drama. "What can I do for you, Jessica?" "It's about Cassidy. She's been talking about transferring schools, maybe dropping out completely. She says she can't concentrate, can't trust people, can't figure out how to move forward." Ellis felt a stab of concern. Cassidy had seemed to be adjusting well to college life when they had last spoken. What exactly is she saying? She's scared of becoming like you or like her mom. She doesn't want to be someone who destroys people, but she also doesn't want to be someone who gets destroyed. She feels like those are the only two options. The observation was perceptive and troubling. Ellis had been so focused on protecting Cassidy from Mara's betrayal that he hadn't considered how his response might affect her long term. What do you think I should do? Talk to her. Show her that there's a third option. Being strong without being cruel, being smart without being manipulative. She needs to see that you're still the dad who taught her to ride a bike and helped with her math homework. Ellis thanked Jessica and called Cassidy that evening. They talked for 2 hours, the longest conversation they'd had since the divorce. She told him about her struggles with trust, her fear of relationships, her uncertainty about the future. I keep wondering if everyone is just pretending to care about me, she said. If everyone has hidden agendas and secret motivations. Not everyone, Ellis said. Most people are exactly who they appear to be. Your mother and Trent were exceptions, not the rule. How do I tell the difference? It was a fair question. How do you trust people when you've been betrayed by the people closest to you? You pay attention, Ellis said. You watch how people treat others when they think no one is looking. You notice whether their words match their actions over time. And you trust your instincts. My instincts told me Trent was a good guy. Your instincts about people are fine. Your instincts about situations might need work. They talked about red flags she'd missed, warning signs she'd ignored because she'd wanted to believe in Trent's innocence. It was a painful conversation, but necessary. Dad, are you happy now? Ellis considered the question. Was he happy? He was satisfied with the outcomes he'd achieved. He was proud of how methodically he'd executed his plans. He was confident that justice had been served. But happiness? That was more complicated. I'm content, he said finally. I'm at peace with my choices. Do you miss Mom at all? I miss the woman I thought she was, but that woman never existed. Sometimes I miss her too, even after everything she did. That's normal. She was your mother for 18 years. The betrayal doesn't erase all the good memories. After they hung up, Ellis sat in his quiet house and thought about happiness. He'd gained justice, but lost the comfortable illusions that had made his old life bearable. He'd gained respect, but lost the easy relationships that had once sustained him. On balance, it was a fair trade. The following spring, Ellis received a letter from Mara. It was the first contact they'd had since the divorce was finalized. Her handwriting was the same, but the tone was different, humbler, more reflective. Ellis, the letter began, I know I have no right to contact you, and I understand if you throw this away without reading it, but I wanted you to know that I've spent the past year thinking about what I did to our family, and I finally understand the magnitude of my betrayal. I won't insult you by asking for forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed 19 years of marriage for a fantasy, and I corrupted our daughter's relationship in the process. I was selfish, cruel, and stupid. I also won't pretend to be the sufferer here. You responded to my choices exactly as I deserved. Everything that happened to me was justice, not persecution. I'm writing this because I want you to know that I finally see you clearly. For 19 years, I thought you were weak because you were kind, boring because you were stable, forgettable because you were humble. I was wrong about everything. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Strong enough to plan methodically while your world was collapsing. Strong enough to sacrifice your own peace of mind to protect our daughter from the truth until she was ready to hear it. Strong enough to become someone completely different when the situation demanded it. I was background noise in your life, not the other way around. I just never realized it until you showed me exactly how insignificant I was compared to your intelligence, your planning, and your will. I hope you find happiness, Ellis. Real happiness, not the artificial contentment I offered you. You deserve someone who sees your strength and appreciates it, not someone who mistakes it for weakness. Thank you for not destroying me completely. You could have sent me to prison. Instead, you gave me a chance to start over somewhere else. I know that mercy came at a cost to your sense of justice, and I'm grateful. I hope Cassidy forgives us both someday. Mara. Ellis read the letter twice, then placed it in his file cabinet with all the other documents from their marriage. It was fitting that Mara's final words to him would be an acknowledgement of everything she'd failed to understand while they were together. He felt no satisfaction from her belated recognition, no vindication from her admission of guilt. The letter was simply another piece of evidence that his assessment of her character had been accurate. Ellis was pruning roses in his garden when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Cassidy's number. Dad, I have news. Good news, I hope. I'm engaged. Ellis nearly dropped his phone. Engaged? To whom? His name is Michael Patterson. He's a senior in my psychology program. I've been dating him for 6 months. 6 months? Why didn't you tell me about him? Because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to watch him carefully, test his character, make sure he was who he appeared to be. I used all the things you taught me about paying attention and trusting my instincts. Ellis felt a complex mixture of pride and concern. He was glad that Cassidy was applying the lessons from their family's destruction, but he hoped she hadn't become as suspicious and calculating as he had. Tell me about him. Cassidy spent 20 minutes describing Michael Patterson, his background, his character, his treatment of her and others. She'd clearly researched him thoroughly, possibly more thoroughly than most people research their future spouses. He sounds like a good man, Ellis said when she finished. I think so too. But, Dad, I want you to meet him. I want your opinion. You don't need my approval to get married. I know, but I want it anyway. Ellis agreed to meet Michael the following weekend. The young man was 23, earnest, and clearly devoted to Cassidy. He was also obviously nervous about meeting her father. Mr. Brewster, Michael said when they shook hands, Cassidy has told me a lot about you. I'm sure she has. I want you to know that I understand how much she's been through, and I would never do anything to hurt her. Ellis studied the young man's face. Michael seemed genuine, but Ellis had learned not to trust first impressions. What do you know about what she's been through? I know her parents went through a difficult divorce. I know her mother made some poor choices that hurt the family. I know she has trust issues because of it. And how do you plan to handle those trust issues? By being consistent, by making sure my words match my actions, by being patient when she needs reassurance, and honest when she asks difficult questions. The answer impressed Ellis. It showed that Michael understood the real challenges ahead and had thought seriously about how to address them. They spent the day together, lunch, a walk around town, dinner at Ellis's house. Michael asked thoughtful questions about Ellis's work, listened attentively to his stories, and treated Cassidy with obvious affection and respect. More importantly, Ellis observed how Michael interacted with service staff, how he responded when Cassidy disagreed with him about something minor, how he handled an awkward moment when Ellis mentioned her mother. By the end of the day, Ellis was satisfied that Michael Patterson was exactly who he appeared to be, a decent young man who genuinely loved his daughter. You have my blessing, Ellis told Cassidy privately before they left. Really? Really, he's a good choice. How can you be sure? Because I spent the day testing him and he passed every test. Cassidy smiled, the first genuinely happy smile Ellis had seen from her in almost 2 years. I learned from the best. The wedding was small and simple, held in a park pavilion with about 50 guests. Ellis walked Cassidy down the aisle, gave a brief toast at the reception, and watched his daughter dance with her new husband. Mara was not invited. During the father-daughter dance, Cassidy looked up at Ellis with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said. For what? For showing me that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty. That being smart doesn't require being manipulative. That I can protect myself without destroying other people. Ellis looked around the reception, at the happy couple, at the genuine smiles, at the celebration of love that was built on honesty rather than deception. You did that yourself, he said. I just provided a cautionary example. No, Dad, you provided a blueprint for how to be strong and good at the same time. It just took me a while to see it. After the reception, Ellis drove home to his quiet house. He sat in his garden as the sun set, thinking about transformation and redemption, about justice and mercy, about the difference between strength and vengeance. Mara had been right about one thing in her letter. He had become someone completely different when the situation demanded it. But maybe Cassidy was right too. Maybe strength didn't require abandoning goodness. Maybe justice didn't require sacrificing mercy. Maybe there was a third option after all. Ellis opened his file cabinet one last time and removed the folder labeled The Quiet Ledger. He carried it outside to his fire pit, the same place where he'd burned his marriage photos 2 years earlier. This time, he was burning something different. Not the past, but the part of himself that had been consumed by the need for perfect justice. The part that had forgotten the difference between protecting himself and destroying others. The flames consumed every document, every photo, every piece of evidence from his methodical campaign against Mara and Trent. As the fire burned, Ellis felt something shift inside him, not weakness returning, but a different kind of strength. The kind that built rather than destroyed. Ellis Brewster had learned to be dangerous when necessary. Now he was learning to be dangerous and good at the same time. He walked back into his house where he began planning his next chapter. Not as the man who'd been betrayed, or the man who'd exacted perfect revenge, but as the man who'd emerged from both experiences with his integrity intact. The audit was complete, the ledger was balanced, and Ellis Brewster was finally free.